Okay, so welcome to my talk, and this talk is a second version actually of this talk specifically for students called Beyond Your Studies. And I just reminded myself what I wanted to wish I knew, understood better when I was a student. So that's basically it. So, whoops, now I shouldn't be in the wrong window, of course. Yeah, so the algorithm of youth is like as long as you're doing your studies, you have lessons, then exercise, then you have a test, and from that you have grades. And it goes on as long as the grades are good enough. So it's really like your life so far is just a long succession of tests and grades. And it's a bit like a tunnel, you enter the new tunnel of, sorry, sorry. Okay. Is that okay? Can I go on speaking or?
Angela, I think someone's mic was unmuted and you had an echo there.
Okay, okay. No, I was just double check because okay, it's good enough. Okay, and then it's like a tunnel. You enter the tunnel of this new chapter in mathematics or whatever, and cryptography or something, and one tunnel after the other, uh, and of course you can feel stuck in a loop, and you can feel like you're going in circles. Actually, you're somehow making progress. It's not always upward, but yeah. And yet you've been guided since the beginning from one step to the next, and your life has been guided by external actors, whether the teachers, I mean, it's not like you have full control. And of course, I didn't really think about that. I was just in the tunnels one after the other. And then one day it will be the last tunnel. And that last tunnel, suddenly the end is near. But what's going on? What was the goal, by the way? Get a diploma, then what? And now, yeah, this is a bit like what I thought at the time. It's what's at the end, and suddenly it's like, wow, you're on your own, and exactly like in the Indiana Jones movie, you're like, holy shit, now what? And this is exactly what I felt at the time. So the plan now would be to find a job, and of course it should be perfect, and then work because you have obviously a perfect manager or something, and it's all good, and then you're eventually retire famous and happy, and yeah, right. This is exactly how it happened. So, but wait, if you go to then you follow another manager and so on, isn't this a different kind of tunnels? And this is a bit what is represented here. It's like you have the tunnel of school, you have the tunnel of work, family, and but yeah, I eventually realized I had more control and I understood how to take more control, but it was really a hard experience for me. So a plan now would be more like, yeah, more realistically to survive, like find a job and hopefully be happy. Uh, yeah, it's getting more difficult. So let me introduce myself a bit first. So I can often be summarized as right now infosec engineer at Google, and I got a Pony Award of crypto in 2017. And this is a bit like some people summarize me. And this is so I have no particular credential except that I had studied at university and made a lot of mistakes, I think, and hopefully it's helpful for some of you to share them with you. Now I've been in my careers 20 something years, mid-career. So basically a student life ago, I was a student, and I have kids, three kids, two teens, who also ask me about what their study will be and everything. And my career has been in different countries and different conditions. So at least I can give you different perspective. But of course, this talk is just based on my own experience. So I'm biased, but yeah. Mm. Uh, I cannot, I'm not a researcher, sociology researcher on studies. I'm just someone with another InfoSec experience. And now let's reintroduce myself because of this Google and Pony, uh, people usually put me in a statue or something. Like some people ask me what car I have because I was famous and successful and all this kind of weird thing. And first of all, while I looked at I enjoyed looking at files in the hex editor since my teens. I know very little about network stuff. I know very little about any other architecture. This is not x86. I know very little about XSS and stuff, I have to restudy it every time I have a new interview, So a lot of things that people just saying, oh, this guy is great, therefore he must be good at this and that and that. It's totally wrong. I've been a malware analyst for 10 years, or at least 10 years professionally, which means actually have difficulties reading source code and programming. I can barely program in Python. I definitely cannot program in C++ or Java. So basically, people are very quick to, just based on Google and Pony, think that I'm able to do everything, and this is just totally wrong. And this is just a common mistakes that I don't do anymore, but that I did as a student, thinking that everyone with such facts of arguable value would therefore be awesome in all domains, which is just totally wrong. So this is my own introduction about myself. So don't get it wrong, this talk is not to hate or reject or the mistakes. It's more about understanding and assuming. You don't have to admit publicly your own weakness, but if it certainly helps to at least do that for yourself to make your life better eventually. So I'm just trying to bring some advice, not to reject or look down on things. And on the other hand, I'm not either asking you to publicly present yourself like I just did, due to all my knowledge weakness in my professional knowledge weakness. Another thing it took me a long time to understand is that I thought I was an idiot for a long time. I thought everyone figured it out, but that's just wrong. And most of us are idiots in our own ways, but that's okay. I just learned that it was fine to understand that everybody and realize that everybody had their weakness, because I kept thinking that I was an idiot. And maybe one of the things I showed before, my parents, being from a different generation, obviously, were the kind of never admitting weakness. And by you never see, you rarely see superstars admitting their weakness, and therefore it gives you the illusion that make you think that you're the idiot and they are awesome. And what are you doing on this planet when such people, such awesome people exist, and you just keep doing mistakes, and that's just totally wrong. I want to shatter this illusion totally. Took me a long while to understand it. uh, the, and again, when you've done mistakes, it's important that to forgive yourself, to forgive others for their mistakes. You'll spare a lot of energy. And before blaming others for having done something wrong to them or to you, then try walking their shoes a bit more. However, do not forget, because remembering bad things that happen to you is also can help you find an extra boost of power, of willpower in your future. So another very important thing is that we all have blinders. So even myself, my experience gives me a perspective, and I don't have the whole picture. I don't have the same perspective as you. Don't blame others for not sharing your perspective. So for example, one example is that I started with we had a computer when I was in my early teens, and I started with Windows 2. So way before Windows 95 and stuff. At the time, computers were very little developed, and yet we had a computer quite early. But my parents thought that computer would not be a possible work in the future, because the computer would just replace the people working. Therefore, they gave me a very wrong advice that that turned me away from computers initially. But and I initially hated them or resented them for that. That they gave me a wrong advice, but you cannot blame someone for having a different perspective due to their work, due to their age, or many things. And for example, a very interesting thing is, how old are you? Google, my current employer, which is quite known, I believe, started in 98 when I was doing my studies. So imagine that now you have a company that is being created today, and in a couple of years you'll hear about it again, and you'll just think it was brand new when I was doing my studies. Google was brand new when I was doing my studies. And which means, how can you have a perspective that would be your very attractive employer in the future when it was just totally new at the time. And I'm really talking about the very old Google web page with the very bubbly logo. I mean, I don't know if you ever seen that, but that's really a long time ago. So it's difficult to share your perspective when so many important things are recent. So the languages maybe you will be working in the future, or your employer may not exist yet. And this is another problem with perspective, because obviously I started with Windows 2. I My first computer had 512 kilobyte of RAM. Obviously, my advice and the advice you can get is not necessarily relevant, right? But it's, what can I do for that? It's not like someone can tell you what you're going to work if your future employer doesn't exist yet, and if the things you're working on doesn't exist yet. So let's start with education in general. uh, Education is kind of trying to bring everyone to through the same test, and these tests are adapted so that the institutions are validating what you know. But on the other hand, it doesn't prevent everyone to be uh, very different. So we were formed by molds, social molds: environment, family, school, from the very beginning. And now, or after you finish, someone's printing something. After uh, you finish your studies, you'll be free, but it will not be easy to notice that you're actually free, because you didn't feel in jail, you were just guided. So you are following the mold, but it will take some time that you suddenly take your shape back again. At the time, during school, I mean, after kindergarten and these things, failure was not an option. While toddlers learn by trying and failing, I think everybody is born hackers. Eventually, at some point, school has no time for that. You must get it right before the next step. I mean, even if at the end you cannot have a second test because you are expected to study before the test. So, which makes many adults uncomfortable with experimenting, and even worse, the unknown of infosec. So, for example, when you analyze a malware, it can take weeks to understand what's going on. A real malware, I mean, and you don't know how long you're gonna need, and this uncertainty, this fog, is actually making it very hard in the long run for some people who are not comfortable with that. Because if they were just standard developers, I mean, it happened to me. One of my managers in the past, he wanted to go back to a developer role because eventually he was uncomfortable with the lack of progress of requiring one more week to understand one functionality of a malware or something. And it felt very uncomfortable saying that to his own manager, to his own family. It feels like failure. And failure, because of the way school taught us and got us used to, is not something everyone can accept. While again, we can think that a failure is not a success, but on the other hand, it's a part of success. And if you're experimenting, then it's totally normal. It's like you have to fail to understand and bring research further than anyone else has. Another thing that is common in school is, and I that totally see with my kids, is worship the top. Then, so for example, my kids keep referring to world famous stars, billionaires, and the best soccer player and everything. Then they just mentioned those that are not too bad, but just super good, but not just the top. And then the bad ones, I mean, the bad ones, the not so good ones, are just shamed, even though they are not that bad. And again, a lot of culture is that the success is always presented as very easy and instant wins. And this is very weird because first, when I started doing better in my own infosec research, some people assumed thought I was famous, and therefore, as I mentioned maybe earlier, they assume I had a lot of money. Therefore, I had like a great car and everything. So some people just asked me out of the blue what car I was driving and this kind of thing, just because I was doing interesting infosec research for them. And it's so connected, and it doesn't make sense if you think about it. I mean, it doesn't always make sense. It's not something that you necessarily chase, but it's like the iceberg illusion of the success. You don't see the hardship, and you just see the car basically, and you just look at the top people, and you just tend to reject the people who are good at what they're doing, but just not worldwide ranked or anything. A thing I've seen very often in infosec is that someone that probably like me. So again, I started looking at files in a hex editor since my teens. I started analyzing virus. For me, it was a hobby, weird hobby, before it was even a school, and there was no infosec courses at university. And I was passionate about it way before it could be a job. If I recall correctly, Google was founded in '98. However, it's only after the Aura attack on Google in 2008, if I'm not wrong, that Google started to take infosec seriously. So when I started being a professional, you couldn't have there were very little malware analyst jobs and this kind of infosec related job, because even Google itself didn't think it was relevant. It was important to have a proper security team. It's different times, right? And so basically, I was passionate about file internals and doing research before it was even even my work. However, I have some awesome colleagues who just don't care about infosec after and before work, who have totally normal standard hobbies. I mean, and they are doing their job very well. But it's totally gatekeeping to think that only the elite CTF players or someone who have CVs or someone who have a Pony Award deserve to be in infosec, or it's totally wrong. And I have some colleagues who are in appearance totally plain, but they are useful and they do their job well, which is good enough, and they are helpful just with that. So all this gatekeeping that I keep seeing, this elitism that I keep seeing about infosec, about stars, I totally reject it. Some of my colleagues, you've never heard of them, they don't want to be heard of, and it's totally fine, and they are super useful and super reliable. So on the other hand, it's also completely okay if you're a bit more a weirdo like me, have weird hobbies. Actually, one of my past hobbies is forbidden in Germany. I will let you guess, but I will not answer. It's illegal in Germany now. And my other problem is that my reverse problem is that I'm only challenge driven. If you give me a task that feels like anyone else could do it, I'm totally losing motivation. And again, it's fine. It's fine to be different. There are different kinds of people. Just that, don't pretend to be someone else. Be honest with your your own values. Understand what you are, and be clear about that. And if you are rejected for being what you are, then it's fine. It's just you're not matching your environment. Some people are only impressed by people who try to show off, and others are just like super awesome and never praising themselves. Both extreme exist. And even beyond being a professional, sometimes it's not because you're a pro that it makes you better. I've met some hobbyists that have been malware analysts for decades with no pressure from any employer, with their actual daily work being very different. But without the pressure and with the passion themselves at home, they were no worse than me, and sometimes they were actually better than me at some things. And another important thing is that the diploma helps you to reach some height, but having exactly an it's not like you need an infosec diploma to be an infosec professional. I had some colleagues who branch out to different careers. We'll talk about that later. And they just could branch out because they have a diploma of some level, even though it was like musicology, medicine, physicists, whatever. They just have the right level of diploma, which proves that they can work. But on the other hand, it's their passion and their self-training that made them good in what they were doing. You see what I mean? It's really having the right. I never judge people on their diploma, but on what they're doing, because again, uh, if they have been doing that for long enough, they might be as good as me, and they didn't need the university or the diploma to actually do it, to prevent it. And anyways, in enough years, your diploma will be kind of useless. As we saw, the languages and the employers are changing quickly. So what you learn for your diploma will be useless. You will have a new experience by then, which compensates. And what you so therefore, if you just rely on your diploma in your career, then after 10 years, let's say, you're just useless if you don't have new experience. Which means if someone had a different diploma but starting studying that for himself or herself uh, at home, then they could be better at that than you. And it's totally normal. I mean, it's totally possible. It happens. Another thing I mentioned before is that my kids again do a lot is the stars. The stars are these things that that waste a lot of energy, that burn a lot of how do you say matter, whatever, black matter. They burn they burn a lot of matter to create hot air around them, and they keep growing and they eventually explode. And what I call stars is that these people who are just showing off and waste their time in, hey, did you see what I did? Did you see what I do? And these people avoid them, because the most impressive people, I call them black holes. Black holes, they attract other things around them, knowledge, people, just by their nature, by their own nature. And these black holes are just people who just are totally humble. I mean, totally. They typically are humble. They are patient. You don't think they are impressive, and but especially they don't waste a single second trying to impress or diminish others. They just try to be themselves, like attract knowledge of what they like, and they are not trying to be someone else. Exactly, like, and when you talk with them about what they did, they don't want to show off. They just want to say, I did that and it was fun. Sometimes they're really acting like small kids, like, hey, it was fun, even though it could be super impressive. So I think it's really important not to waste time on trying to impress people. If you did something impressive, people will acknowledge it eventually. However, and just remember, when you were a kid and were just happy to do things that you liked, and without trying to be someone else, trying to force yourself into doing something, it was just like, I think professional life is more about finding your own playground, your own, and sometimes also your own secret garden. So I totally dislike this permanent uh, attitude that my kids and many others have, mentioning whether it's billionaires or superstars of programming. Uh, I mean, I don't hate them, but just listening to what super famous programmers have done, it could be just totally useless to you. If a billionaire walks in a room, on average, suddenly everyone is millionaire, yet nothing in your life changed. And if they say follow your dreams, it could actually be a very bad advice. So it does not guarantee that what they say or did will change anything in your life in a positive way. So beware of success speech. And I'm trying this not to be a success speech, but it's not because someone won the lottery that it's worth buying every week a lottery ticket, because eventually you might win. You know, it's a bit about understanding more, finding your own playground to find your better future. As I said, it's normal and okay to be different. You can adapt your behavior, and of course you have to adapt your behavior sometimes, but just don't try to be someone else at all cost, which was a problem when I was a student to me. And you do have skills, maybe they're not clear enough yet, and this is also something very important, because I could analyze files when during my teens, and yet because no one in my family will acknowledge that, it took me a very long time, basically until I was 30, to understand that it was a useful skill to some people and to get a job for that. Again, about the misguided thoughts that I kept having when I was a student, I thought that I'm an imposter. What the fuck I'm doing now? Sorry, I'm French. I have no skill. I have no idea what I'm doing. What's the point in studying something? And again, this is normal thoughts to have, but it's important to reconsider them. Of course, sometimes you can feel bad, and don't let the bad day distract you from all the progress you made. On the other hand, remember that growth is not perfectly linear process, and sometimes it feels like you wasted time, but it was worth it because overall you're improving. So it's important to forgive yourself too. Everybody does mistake. I said earlier, forgive others, but especially forgive yourself. If you blame, and if you blame someone yourself or yourself too much, ask around. Sharing experience recalibrates your expectations. So if you think that you're the only one to have, I remember not being so much talking about my studies, probably because I thought I had to hide it from my family. But sharing experience with others, eventually by or read about it, you recalibrate your expectations. And when you see that some people did the same, which is the goal of this talk basically, or did worse, then suddenly you're like, hey, this was just a normal step. Exactly like every child, every toddler learn to walk, to grab things, you know. It's but as a student, it's probably when you're feeling adult, it's probably harder to forgive yourself because, well, you're not a child anymore. You're not a kid. You're not a young child anymore. Therefore, you forget that actually maybe everyone else did the same mistake too. At the same time, motivations is vital. There are things we love, there are things we hate, and you have to finish your tunnels until the end of university, of course, but it's really important to try to remember what you really like before those tunnels. What was these little things that you liked before university started taking most of your time? And again, for me, it was this infosec thing because again, it didn't work. It wasn't a profession then. But then you say you probably think this guy is boring me with this infosec thingy. Okay, now imagine the same for you. You are used to something that no one around you acknowledge as good because it's just too new, and you don't. It's not a work yet because your employer doesn't exist yet, and yet you still like it. You see what I mean? It's this is what I mean. At the time, it felt like totally useless to spend any time in trying to do that any further because my environment kept telling me it was not worth it. Very importantly, Stop comparing yourself to others. I remember, of course, the top guy in my class in university, super impressive. Your skills and experience are just different. And again, the only person you need to compare yourself is who you were yesterday. You tend to overthink what the others, you tend to believe that people just know everything you know. In reality, it's totally wrong. There are plenty of things that each of you listening to me has done that I've never heard of, I would never consider doing. So it's very important to spend and time finding and acknowledging your skills and experience. And when you meet someone that is like super good at something and does like unbelievably good, very often you just, I mean, I have that in my colleagues, some people that just super impressive, and then you're like, yeah, my father was doing that too, and I've been doing it ever since I was young. And suddenly you're like, okay, this person has, it's normal that that person is so good when they've been doing it for 10 years already. And then you realize that, but I don't like it so much anyway, so there's no way I could do that for a year. So it makes you understand that greatness doesn't come by accident. Let's go through a few other things. And firstly, most important, this is probably not relevant to the audience here because it's English in university, but it's a correct level of English. In your case, here you're listening to me, then it's probably weird to hear that. But what I mean is that if you just are able to communicate openly internationally, not in public, not doing presentation, but just if you can just know the language and you have the diploma, that's all you need for now. You learn to rest all along the way. When you need to get started, when you start a job, you think that you need to know everything, and in the end, it's you just have an idea what you want to do, but then the rest will come. And there are some things that you will never really know, and that's why you have colleagues that they can instead do that for you or learn that for you. So I am ready for this job is not a right question. It's like you're never ready. But of course, don't be stupid and yeah, prepare a minimum. Yeah. But it's not important to worry about trying to thinking that you need to know everything in advance. So just a correct level of English and your diploma and the experience you got, and that's good enough. Of course, another very important thing, and that I see too much, uh, maybe, is attitude. And some people just want to feel different and to show off, but there is always a limit. And you need to be tolerant, and you need to, if you want to be too special beyond what you deserve, you'll get you'll get your money back one day. And definitely, it starts with judging people, whether it can be also, but not necessarily related to racism, sexism, and all these things. But your thoughts become your words, and then you get used to it, and then you think it's normal, and then it's how people identify you. And I'm telling that a lot to my kids because by using the bad words regarding someone, by letting you judge someone with something that is unrelated, eventually it will become a part of you and you will consider it normal, and your attitude will be a problem and will prevent you to get the job you like. And I had a sometimes you hear internally, even at Google, that someone like totally racist or totally sexist is trying to look for a job and says, "No, I don't work with black people or women," or it is like, "Wait, what?" And yeah, this doesn't work, right? But that you can think you can say that so openly during a interview means that some people they expect to be hired even if they say that. It's like, wow, some people do that, and they think it's normal because it's already too late for them to change their attitude. So your thoughts and your words have more impact than you think eventually. So be careful with that. And your diploma experience is no excuse. I have a lot of colleagues that behave as if they were the founders of Google, and to be honest, it's not nice. And there's this comic, Dilbert comic here. It's funny because I myself once added a feature to Gmail, but I don't like, I don't ask people to bow before my greatness. But sometimes it really feels like just because some people have been hired somewhere, they can behave as king of the world. And then this is what happened, that sometimes, yeah, it's not necessarily a good thing to have. I mean, how can I say? Uh, yeah, arrogance can really be a problem in the future if you are not careful with your behavior. No, being insecure is human, but being a jerk is definitely not okay. And when I keep saying be yourself, but it's not about rejecting, and it's just being honest with yourself. If you hate something, if you hate your job, then admit that you shouldn't do it for too long. But then you cannot eventually hate everything. Otherwise, you're just a useless hater. Another thing, sometimes you will feel like you're stuck in a loop, as I mentioned. And a very important advice I found myself and that I could give to, and that improve people's life is that when you think that your life really suck, then, sorry, French, um, um, just maybe wake up a little earlier and start the day by spending time just for you on something unrelated, so that that day was for you too. And it will feel good. And again, with the compare only yourself with who you were yesterday, it will help slowly improving your situation, at least inside, when during hard times. And don't be too hard on yourself. Sometimes there are just days you can't work, but sometimes you just think too much about what you should do, and no one can do that altogether. It's just you're asking yourself too much, and you learn that you have to take care of yourself. And health is an important topic because, of course, when I was a student, I thought, hey, I'm young, I don't need this, I don't need that, and I'm just healthy, that's normal with my age. And eventually you learn that you're not smart if you're healthy. You're just lucky enough, and some people didn't have this luck. And there's no health credit, you cannot go negative. You need to take care of yourself. And one mistake I certainly did as a student was think I would save money by not investing or basically staying on very uncomfortable desk. I'm not saying you need luxury, but definitely expensing a bit, just a bit, to make your life a little less uncomfortable may help a lot your motivation and your happiness going to the university every day. So definitely, this is a mistake I did of ruining my eyes by having bad lightings in my student room. And while I could just have bought an extra lamp and work more comfortably, and it would have been less painful for my life. And eventually, when you ruin your eyes, then you realize it was a mistake all along. So maybe don't do that. And again, I thought that being productive just means sitting and working. But no, you need some time off, you need sleep, you need to balance all this. And this sounds like it's like boring parental discussion, but there's a reason why. Eventually, I learned the hard way when my back was stuck as a student. Like I hit a nerve on my spine and whatever, and I couldn't sit down anymore. And then my body told me the hard way that I needed to take a bit more care of it because otherwise I couldn't go on studying. So now let's see. What did you study for? The thing is, school usually provides a unique form of learning, and there are very different ways of learning. And the first one, reading a book, an article, or something. In my case, I can. It's very hard for me to read a long text. I need to play around with whatever I have, the file, the malware. I I because otherwise things go. I forget them very quickly. So I cannot. If you just give me a book and no paper to practice or something, it's just useless. So this is exactly why maybe you know me for my posters where I draw file formats. This is because this was the way for me to remember how they work, because I need to draw things, and I just cannot read something for too long. Understanding the way you work really helps, because then uh, it for example, if I want to remember a word, I probably will write it down a lot of times, or say it out loud, maybe sing it for some time. It sounds stupid, it sounds useless, it sounds like a waste of time. But if this is the way that I can remember something for good, then this is definitely the the best way I found. And understanding how you work, and maybe some of you are laughing that, hey, this guy cannot read a book, this guy cannot has to sing something to remember it. Yeah, but what if it just works? It's in the end, I don't care. I learned that people have their own ways, and as long as it does the trick, whatever floats your boat. The diploma is at university something very important. It's an international standard. Is it meaningless? No, it's a credential that is acknowledged by institutions. It also connects you to previous students. Sometimes it's a bad thing, as I said. It brings arrogance, and it's an illusion that it actually brought you something. Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't expect that the university got its whole network infected on purpose for real incident response training. I hope not. So basically, the diploma is the key to the first job, but the school and job market differs vastly. And again, the school covers a subset of your skills. Again, you have a lot more useful skills than what was acknowledged at school. And again, some maybe a lot of things that may not be taught at school yet. You don't need more skills. You already have many skills. You need to understand your skills, their strengths and their weakness. You may lack experience using these skills professionally, but that's an entirely different problem. But thinking I don't have the skills to find a job, or I don't have more skills than the others, is just wrong. It's just you need to identify them, and some of your skills may not be related to your courses, to what you're studying, to infosec. You don't need to be the best, also very important. You just need some skills. Your local bakery doesn't have to be the best in the world. It's as I said, school is making it easy to rank people and always emphasize on the best. But you could just be the worst in your school and still be good enough to get a job. And once the others are unavailable because they've been hired, then you just need to be better than the others available. And again, you're not too late on the market, because you're unlikely to be the best anyway. And it's not like there is only one place of incident response analyst somewhere in the world. There is no, it's like there is always a place for someone else to be hired. So thinking I don't need to be the best, I'm not the best and I'm not good, is really a wrong thinking, misguided thought. So just make an inventory of your skills. Try and list inside what you like that isn't taught in school. That like a bit like me and my hex viewing. I've never we never looked at files in the hex editor when uh, during my during university, or maybe it was taught at school in a different way, and maybe you just something that you forgot that you have the time to try and expand to play with, but that you initially liked. Over the years, I started to believe that everyone has hidden superpowers. So a superpower can be something that you're comfortable, very comfortable with, and sometimes you don't realize, and that is actually uncommon in your group, like professional, social, racial, religious. So, for example, I have a colleague who's good at what he's doing, but his superpower is that he's never losing patience when he has um, another user on the phone. And while most of us colleagues would be uh, would get angry and lose patience regarding people who just don't understand. Some Many hackers would never wear a tie or would not listen to anything that is not metal. And it's not necessarily a superpower to do that, but this kind of a new uncommon uh, ability that is not in your group makes you different. And in the end, that could get you a job or happiness or more. Again, I believe you're. I mean, you're probably aware of the Log4j bug that started this weekend. That is making a disaster on the infosec, and suddenly we realize that very few hackers can properly code Java. So, and but again, they are superpowers not because you're doing something amazing, but because if even if you wanted to, most people wouldn't get the patience to be on the phone with someone for hours and not lose patience, or many people, if you ask me to learn and code Java, nope. It just uh, nope. I mean, I already have problems coding anything that is not Python, so that's what I mean. Everyone has superpowers and they are not necessarily acknowledged, but it's important for yourself to realize that what you're comfortable with is maybe very unique and actually super useful in some case. Of course, sometimes the superpower is totally unrelated with what you're doing professionally, but that's another problem. So if you start, you just have a proper level of English, a good attitude, you understand your skills, like and dislike, and you already made your life a bit more comfortable, then you could be ready to find a job. And you learn more on the job anyway. So now let's find a job. And I actually worked a bit independent. I mean, I worked in independent, in startup, in small companies, and in big companies. So I've been through all the different things. Independence is super intense. It's pretty awesome, but it's super risky, and you're in front of the customer sometimes. You feel naked, it's like super difficult, especially when they get angry. It can be super nice, but it's really intense, very intense, which is a good and a bad thing. The startup is a bit the same, but you be ready to do everything that needs to be done uh, in the company. So from going to buy a computer yourself to just do your normal job, but it can be like totally crazy. It can go crazy in a single day, and the ship might sink at any moment. And then you have the big corporations with the open space, the meetings, the cults or the culture, and all the politics and whatever, which led to this very interesting diagram of the hierarchies in different companies. I love the Microsoft one, but I'm not sure it's better in the other companies, to be honest. And academia is also interesting. I considered doing a PhD in the past. Yeah, it's another thing. It's also very different. And first of all, you have job interviews, and job interviews is a filtering ceremony full of weird rituals. But what I personally think is that a job interview can get you the job you want, or can you make you lose? Uh, oh, sorry, someone raised their hand. I did fail to notice that. Joseph?
Joseph, do you want to unmute yourself to ask a question? Okay, looks like someone lowered their hand. Oh, sorry about that.
Sorry?
Looks like they lowered their hand. I'll ask them in
Okay.
private if they have a question.
Okay. Okay. So, uh, so the job interviews are so important yet so weird because they're so unique in their. It's like a it's like a voodoo ceremony or something that I really advise you to try and apply just for the sake of trying, and get more experience and get more comfortable with that, because it can be so important in your life. It can be really life changing, that it's better to get used to all this kind of interviews. And God, I did a lot of mistakes in my first interviews. So the most important advice is that, so I'm interviewing people at Google naturally, and is like, be honest, be yourself. Not knowing is fine, and it guides the interviewer, because we know that interviewing is difficult and time consuming for both sides, which means if you have someone who's rejected for a position they wanted, but it feels like there could be another position, then we're not just going to say, hey, sorry, too bad, game over, try it next year. No. If someone is definitely not ready for some position but could be hired in another position, then we are still going to try hire them. On the other hand, it's crazy, if not beautiful, how people tend to oversell themselves, and it's so easy to detect. So the typical stupid question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Instead, I asking some stuff like this, an open question related to infosec, and people lead me the way they want, the way either they have experience, which is good, or the way they think they're going to impress me with something that is actually an empty shell. And when they oversell, when the candidates oversell themselves by trying to impress me with stuff, and then I start going more in that direction, you eventually see that there's nothing, and typically they end up trying to bullshit their way, and it doesn't end well. So definitely be honest, be yourself, but don't oversell yourself. Admit your weakness. Uh, say what you're thinking, but definitely don't try to impress, and especially don't try to impress in your resume. If you have 3-page resume and you just finished your studies, it's very unlikely. So that's already very kind of disappointing, I'd say. And one thing that is very common is, it's okay to be silent. It's okay to be stuck, but just speak out loud what you're thinking. It's normal to be nervous. There's no need to over apologize. Just speak as if whatever you're thinking at that moment. Just think of this. It's actually, think of the interview as a normal conversation with an expert giving you that time. There are some of my colleagues, I would never be able to have an hour conversation with them because they are just too busy and we have nothing to discuss with them that would take that long. Yet they go to interviews and they suddenly spend 40 minutes or so with the candidates, which is a privilege in a way that some of my colleagues are so super busy, but when there is a candidate, they suddenly will talk for 50 minutes long, 40 minutes long with that person. So think of this as the opportunity to have an interesting conversation with an expert, and don't overthink it, And when I said don't overthink it, I mean it the hard way, because whenever I super prepared an interview and I was super nervous of thinking I need this job, I failed. I didn't get the job, and all, like in 100% of my jobs in my life are when I came to the interview, just thinking, hey, let's see what's going on and let's discuss with people. So in my case, preparing and thinking what I should do was destroying my, I mean, my ability to get a proper interview, to do a proper interview. And on the other hand, it's whenever I was just expecting a good time. I mean, expecting when I was just thinking, hey, let's see that I got the job. So it's a bit sad, but this is my life so far. Another thing is that sometimes I regret failing to detect that some of my employers, I wasn't able to detect that something was really fishy. And it's not just the salary, the job title. A very important situation is that a very dangerous situation is when the person giving you orders is not responsible for you. So basically, the person judging you is not the one giving you orders. So basically, one person has the ability to ask you whatever they want and not be judged in how you're performing. So basically, this means slavery in a company. So this is something you really want to avoid if you can. And it's not because you were accepted at the interview that you don't you're forbidden to ask questions about the situation and to try to detect possible red flags in your future employers. Now, another topic that is very that can be very confusing, leading to confusion when you're a student, is when you read social media too much. Social media is a great way to connect with peers, can be a good information stream, and can be fun. But I've heard some people saying that they needed the X amount of connections on LinkedIn before finishing university or this kind of thing. And I couldn't believe it because I've known some people with no social media presence that are just awesome, or it, it's it can be just a huge echo chamber that is actually bringing nothing positive regarding your career or yourself. And yeah, there is the mob behavior that when some people start to too many bad opinions connect together, it can be extremely bad, and so people just leave social media for good. So just be careful. Don't take it too seriously. Don't be impressed because someone has X amount of followers. Although some people actually become slave of their audience, and they just start to only do things that will bring them more followers, and will stop doing whatever they prefer. And this is again, don't try to be someone else, even if your audience disagree. But who are they, and why would you care? Another advice in general is that if somehow you're bored, then it means that fate gave you time, and find out why. Probably this is an opportunity given to you that there is something that you could find. And again, staying focused on yourself and disconnected from social media can be a good way to rest, spend time for yourself, and maybe find your next steps, or again find some inspiration. So which is why I know I if I'm familiar with debugging, you speak to your rubber ducky or you speak to an object and you explain the problem to an inanimate object, and this will make you realize what the problem is, and you will suddenly find your what the problem in your programming on your program is. So being bored is could be taken as an opportunity to find something new, or to find something that you cannot get otherwise. Another things I learned the hard way was once, or more than once, but a very important time, my talk and project was cancelled. So I was rejected as a conference. And what I was pissed off, and I was I how do you say? I I I I let it. I completely gave up, and that's the problem. And then my talk was accepted again, and suddenly I had lost all my current knowledge until then, and it was in a mess. And the first person, the person that was most hurt by me being pissed off and giving up was me, because I gained experience, but I need to preserve it because no one else will. And this is exactly why I'm doing my posters. Is when I understand the structure of a file, I'm trying to present it in a way that is useful for me, which is also why I'm doing these presentations and slides. Is that I'm trying to get to organize and get my ideas together so that I can reuse them later. So it's kind of my organized backup. And it's not for others, it's for yourself first, even when no one seems interested anymore in it. But you will be the first person to be hurt by losing this knowledge. So when you're rejected at university or for any event by something you did, at least just try to store it as if you were still finishing it. So because then you will what you will get back later will be organized and reusable knowledge rather than just a mess, you know. So again, something I learned the hard way, and I don't do that anymore because it's a waste to spend a lot of time and then you're rejected and suddenly you drop all this in the bin because you're pissed off. Yeah, it's sad. It's harder to do things, but well, I regret doing so. So other advice. There is always this saying that you are the smartest person in the room. If you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I understand what it means, but it's do you smartest according to who? And there is a room for everyone. And do you need to show that you're the smartest? You don't have to show all your layers. And hiding a part of yourself could be also relieving. So I think this if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room can be true, but it can be proof of arrogance, and it's up to you to determine: do you need to definitely leave the room, or is just because someone think they have to show that they are smarter than everyone, you know, which is again arrogance. Could be arrogance. Again, arrogance can come from the proud, like do you use VI or Emacs or this kind of thing, space or tabs? It could sound like a joke, but um, it's okay to be proud of your value. And sometimes you think that your values are the right one, and suddenly someone comes and just found something that is just different, and suddenly you realize you've been doing wrong all along. And again, it's difficult to understand how many of these values are personal and some how which one are taught by university or by your surroundings, by your environment. So it's very interesting to see that sometimes some stuff that you say this is how it's done and this is how we've always done it should actually be destroyed totally because it was wrong or bad all along. But it's probably very difficult to admit. And usually it's when someone new, and you'll be someone new in your first job. It's very often someone new who comes and just brings new tradition. So it's very important that you keep this as maybe you're bringing novelty to your next for your first jobs, and that could be a superpower. To be honest, with all after all the experience I have in different companies, I'm not surprised anymore to be surprised. And sometimes some people are doing so amazing things that they take for granted because they've just been doing it for so many years or something. Or sometimes it's something in the past. Like I met the author of LaTeX, and he moved on and he was doing different things then. Maybe you've heard of LaTeX. I'm joking. But what I mean is that it's incredible that some people did some amazing things that are kept in history. And then it was just something in the past, but it's just who they are. and they just believed it was standard. And maybe at the time when they started it, people just told them it's either nothing interesting, if not boring or lame, which is again what I got from my own surroundings when I was younger doing hacking stuff. A few things to keep in mind regarding working. That's a bit for later, but just to get used to it professionally, is that um, every system can be gamed. It's tempting to take shortcuts and to just cheat at something. But eventually, I've known some people who just can't help cheating in their appearance and try to show off a bit more than what what they could. And eventually, they lose all their trust, and some people just ignore them just because they never did trustable things from the very beginning, and eventually, people just ignore them entirely. These people are, how do you say, you kind of start to hate them, but it's important to hate the game and not the players. If you really wanted to get rid of people who game the system, then you need to change the rules, because someone else will come and game the system again. A very important system to game in infosec are the metrics. So how many tennis balls can you store in a tube? Once I was measured by the amount of files that would be uploaded every week on VirusTotal that we would detect, which means that if on Sunday evening I would append a lot of garbage to already detected files, suddenly I would upload all of them to VirusTotal. I would suddenly flood the VirusTotal uploads with samples we already detect, even though they are just already detected samples and with garbage. So the problem is that here, yeah, the metric is very stupid, but you can either benefit from it or you can prove that it's stupid and make the effort to come with better metrics. But of course, if you are already in the gamer kind of people, then yeah, go on, and one day you will realize you have no skill because you kept gaming a system, and yeah, it's too late. And then people will just ignore you as a cheater. And again, I'm not saying that because I believe any one of you is necessarily a cheater, but infosec is still a new topic, and it's easy to game the system. I'll talk a bit about it later again. So politics happens all the time, and it's a full-time job. Are you ready to waste all your time and energy? I'm not saying give up, but really sometimes, I mean, you'll understand that later. Hopefully, sadly. But yeah, some people just want to create drama and are ready to waste all their energy for that. Yeah, sadly, it's not just for politics, for governments, but also for companies. Promotions, like applying to be a manager or something. First of things, many companies cheat there, and they will reject promotions based on politics, arbitrary reasons, and sometimes you have a shinier title, but then you it's just golden handcuffs in the end, and you just end up Excel spreadsheet and draw arrows bit on diagrams, but don't. It's not uncommon, but you don't do any technical stuff anymore. And people often I've seen often people step down from promotion, realizing that was too much bureaucracy and too much politics, and they're not something they actually wanted. So, of course, everyone wants to be a CEO initially, maybe, but eventually, it's not necessarily a good thing. And I've seen a lot of people stepping down because, yeah, if you want to climb up, you need to be ready for bureaucracy, politics, full time, and not and losing doing technical stuff, which you may prefer. And definitely do something I understood in my career is that there's no perfect permanent job, whatever the employer. Your employer can totally change, your job can totally change just because you have a different conditions. Like your manager changed and your previous manager was awesome and the new one is really not, shouldn't be a manager, is not able to understand you and doesn't want to understand you. And sometimes you can have a very the nearby team can work very differently and super nice, while your team, because of a different manager, can be very bad. So uh, yeah, definitely don't believe that it's just because of one employer that some are good and some are bad. It's definitely not that easy, and it doesn't stay constant over time. Meetings, I'm not sure. In a, well, yeah, you'll see. Meeting can be good, and meeting can be awful. It depends. If the meeting is awful, then use it to get inspiration or relax. I had a great hacks ideas during meetings that was unrelated because there was nothing to think. Again, I was brain golfing. I was file format golfing in my head. So meetings can be useful, but not in the way they were intended initially. It can be very hard, but it's surviving during meetings can be very useful as a skill. I don't know if it's a superpower, but definitely finding inspiration during a boring meeting can be useful. My career path and possible career path for you could be that initially you just want to find a job at any cost. Like the first years, you find a job, whatever it is. And then you understand that you hate it enough that you want to find a really better one, something that you really prefer. So that's when I understood that I preferred infosec stuff. Then in your 40s, you start to realize that all what you thought was good for you is realizing is how do you say, you're suddenly in the middle of your career and suddenly you realize that what you really want to do actually is something totally unrelated. And this at that moment bigger career path happen, and basically you can have as colleagues some people who initially started studying something very different. And remember what I said about the diplomas. That's when you suddenly have having colleagues in infosec that are just physicists or musicologues or psychologists or nuclear scientists. So it's totally okay to work on something unrelated to your diploma. Again, your diploma is just a potential key to the first job, and it's better that you eventually find what you prefer to work on, even if it's unrelated to what you studied. But since it's because it's what you prefer, then this is better, just better for everyone, for you and for your future colleagues. So keep in mind that when even you're finishing and you're finishing your diploma, your current diploma, it can be totally okay to actually start doing something totally different. And that's what I assume. I assume not everyone in your class will just work where they think they want it, because this is not what they truly wanted. Again, don't worry about the first job. You will not know everything. And like toddlers, initially you're clueless, but you just imitate others, let's say, get used to it, slowly get better, gather experience, and become better at it. There's no shortcut. There's no shame in this. I have no idea what I'm doing. It's just normal. Like babies, we just start life without knowing. We just start professional life with no experience. It's normal to make mistakes. I remember I spilled my first coffee on the first day. I spilled my first coffee in front of my first manager. You know, like the very first moment I spilled it in front of her. Talk about ruining the first day, the first professional day ever. So don't worry. You'll laugh about it later, but there's no reason to over worry about that, about all these details, because you'll get better at things eventually. And now the ultimate secret, how to be the best at something. Well, there's only one way to do that, is to create your own thing. When you do something long enough, as I said, and you start to imitate and you see what's missing and you try to fill the gap, at least don't expect people to see what you see, because only you can see your idea. No one will have this idea for that. You can listen to advice, but you still follow on this idea. And then if you think you don't belong to this world and this idea is totally new, it's because it was born in your brain, which means you were made to create it. And again, remember, ideas can be hard to share. Your vision only belongs to you, especially initially. And something awesome can be seen as crazy as much as something can be seen as bad. You see what I mean? It's like because it's totally unheard of. It's totally, no one did that before. And when I started doing file format stuff, I remember talking with my colleagues and they said, no one does that. Why would you do that? It's a weird idea. I've never heard such a thing. I don't see why. And I've seen a lot of negative feedback from people who I respected a lot. And again, they couldn't have my perspective because they didn't have my own experience of looking at so many files in the past. So what I mean is that don't expect people to understand you, and don't be. It's not necessarily they will even say encouraging things, but it's when you start to still go on and prove that this is actually useful, that eventually they will be convinced, right? So basically, I would say do the first prototypes yourself and don't listen too much to other people. You see what I mean? And when you start seeing the benefit, then you can start sharing these benefits with others, and then they will understand better. But initially, when you have something new, they will not be, they are not in the conditions to actually understand you. And to be honest, all this is scary. Scary to do things that no one else did, scary to fail, to be laughed at. And it's only probably when you have a very shitty job that suddenly you have the kick, you have the booster, the moral booster to say, I want to try something else again. Sometimes it's life is very hard and you need to fall completely. Then you can improve again. And when you have regrets of something you didn't do in the past, don't beat yourself up too much. It's just normal that you remember. As I said, do not forget, but forgive yourself. And they give you the booster to try harder and be bolder. And meanwhile, that the comfort zone, exactly. I mean, it's hard initially, but eventually, after enough regrets, you will move out and then you'll put things in motion. Sometimes it's also good when someone is telling you that will never work. This is actually can be very powerful when a person you dislike or hate is telling you, you're an idiot, it will never work. We'll see about that. But otherwise, this is why actually I'm presenting at conferences, is because when you commit yourself to a deadline, it also helps to urge things and to make things happen faster. You know, when you say, I'm going to present on that, suddenly oh shit, I have to do it now. But it's okay when you're doing that for school, but when you do that for yourself, can be also a very good motivation with a hard deadline, of course, because otherwise people just get postponed, like writing a book, never happens. Again, you have nothing to lose, so don't worry. Don't say do it because it requires confidence, and just say, hey, let's see, or oh fuck it. Over worrying doesn't help. Sometimes it's okay to stop. Be honest with your mistakes, assume them. Don't hesitate killing your project early. You got the experience anyway. Ask for honest feedback. But stopping on a project doesn't mean it can be painful, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Free time is a very interesting topic because we never have enough. And to be honest, until I had kids, I thought I was using all my free time, and until I had kids, it was just totally different. When you have kids, young, there's a chapter I will talk about that later. But when you have kids, you count your free time in seconds, and you become much more efficient in your life because you just can't afford. Before I used to think, oh, I only have 1 hour free, that won't be enough. But when I had kids, I remember I let my laptop open on the mantelpiece, on top of the chimney where the kids cannot reach, and I let it open with the code editor there. And whenever I have 15 seconds, I would add a new line of code. And I did some of my posters at 2 a.m. when carrying my son, who couldn't sleep, and typing pieces of my poster with 2 fingers at night, just because it was the only moment I had free, even though I was standing carrying a baby who couldn't sleep because of stomachache. So the notion of free time gets very different. But anyway, it's about finding the best way to optimize it without ruining yourself. But remember, nothing comes easy. Anything takes a long time to master. And one thumb rule that I have is that if you can still count how much you've tried, it's probably not much. If you are asking Lionel Messi how many times he kicked the ball, he would be like, "Wow, how would I know?" And when you tried so much that it hurts even trying to estimate how much you tried, then it's probably good. Because if you still care about how much you tried, and remember, that's a problem with school. With school, you only have a given amount of weeks or days between two tests. So it is all timed. But in the future, if you think things are going to come naturally after a certain amount of time, then it's an illusion. Of course, that could be crazy to think about that, but try to think about what you really like and what you would like to spend countless hours on, and maybe that's the right way to approach it. Practicing now on whatever you want to do will benefit your future. And again, if you can count how much you've tried, that's probably not that much. This is also one of the rule I was saying. When you count how many times you woke up because you had a kid at night, you still have it easy. It's when it's really hard that you actually stop giving up or you're not able to count anymore how many times you woke up, that then, yeah, it sounds like the right counter. And remember, when you ask, but how can I try? How can I do X? Well, what did you try? And if after 2 years there's this thing you wanted to try, but you eventually never gave it a try, then face it, you are probably never interested. And if you tried, but you still hate it after some tries, then be honest and move on. I remember when I started in InfoSec, so rootkit was the trendy stuff. And eventually I realized that, no, I really don't like that. On the other hand, when I was looking at Packer executable Packer for malware, that's really what I liked. So it was not trendy at the time, but it's still what I liked, and that's what I became an expert for, because that was what I really wanted to spend some time on. In the subject of being forgiving regarding other people, first things, it sounds weird, but they say that love can be expressed regarding in 5 different ways, and everyone has their own expectations of loves. Some people want gifts, time, contact, service, or words. And you have to understand that people are different. People have different expectations in the same situation. And if you keep it for yourself, it won't the situation won't improve. If you explain how you feel, just how you feel, and don't judge others, it will guide toward a better understanding. Good relation is about balance, not control, and also not being controlled, not accepting to be controlled. And what's happiness altogether? And a form of happiness is to stop giving up. Remember that there is no end to your tunnel. It's not like there's a tunnel and you're the end. It's like you're the light. And as I show, are you working for yourself or are you working to impress someone? Maybe happiness is because your expectations cannot match reality. Happiness comes from simple things that are for you. You are your own light. There's no end to your tunnel. And when you realize that, then your life will be lighter. There's also this myth that the best way to live is when your talent is useful and matches your passion and money. As I said, you don't have to be passionate to work. And whether it's useful is not really necessary. And there are people with boring jobs who are understanding that they have boring jobs, but they get money from that. And with that, they can pursue their passion at home. Hopefully, it partially overlaps, but it's not necessary. So the myth of the perfect alignment of everything can be good, but not necessarily. And again, I've met enough people who are passionate about something that they keep secret from their work, not because it's illegal, but it's just because it's unrelated. And they just have actually something they are good at that gets them a lot of money. And your passion you don't have to be good at your passion as long as it makes you happy, A very important thing is to be toward happiness is count your blessings. But I would say that it's easy when you're on the beach and you're just resting and it's nice, the weather is nice. It's easy to think, oh, my life is so good and everything. But it's much harder to count your blessing during hardships. When you had a car crash and you realize at least everyone is alive. My holidays are ruined, but everyone is alive. Or when you have someone dead, but only one person dead. It's horrible to say that, but you realize, and life is unfair and makes no sense. But in these big hardships, when you talk to others and when you read about others going through similar hardships, suddenly you count your blessings. And then it brings happiness in the moment that was the hardest. I'm actually going through a difficult divorce. Police was involved, social service were involved. My son was suicidal, this kind of thing. And by discussing with people around me, I could, how can I say, I eventually met people with similar situations. And I heard they went through things that I didn't have. Despite my hardships, I didn't have the worst things ever. I mean, there are some crazy stuff that I didn't have to go through. And suddenly I realized my luck, my relative lucks. But suddenly they were almost jealous of my situation, even though my situation was already felt very unfair. So remember to count your blessings, not just when you're happy and when everything is fine, because that's easy to forget. Of course, when you're on the beach and there's nice weather and everything, everyone is, oh, my life is so awesome. But it's when things really went bad. As I said, when you're going down to the lowest, it's only then you can only go back up. then in this case you will appreciate your life and you manage to be happy even in very difficult times. And again, life isn't fair, makes no sense, which is why you need to find and define your own purpose to give sense to your life, you know? Don't count on others. You're your light in your tunnel. There's no end. And despite all this, that you, okay, death and whatever, and divorce, you don't necessarily control everything. What could be the biggest mistake? And the biggest mistake is what I've seen is that I've seen enough people just thinking they could have kids and that would be fine. And I met so many people with that they had parents, but that already didn't like each other from the very beginning, you know. And these kids were born because people didn't think further, and now there is a totally unhappy child, a happy person in life that went through crazy hardships in their life because they were born in a family that shouldn't have happened in the first place. There are people who believe that, oh, I don't like her, I don't like him, but yeah, let's get married anyway. We'll see, maybe it will improve things. And hey, we're still not happy. Maybe let's have a kid and we'll improve things. Oh my God, having kids is hard, you know? Even if it makes everything harder and you cannot be ready enough. So unless you really want to, please don't. And even if people telling you, oh, when will you have kids? Some people are just fine with not having kids. And when I see some people, it's probably better that never have kids. So even if your parents like, hey, when your mom says, when will I be a grandma? Don't force it, you know. It would be very bad things, and then you cannot change the future, you know. I know someone did, you know, accidental birth, you know. It's not something you want as a future, you know. Especially then you're stuck with a child you don't necessarily want. So just be careful, you know. That's probably just the only things that I will prefer that you avoid, you know. And maybe you considered that before. It was suicidal earlier this year because of the divorce. But yeah, just think that death is the last action in your game. What will you do until that point? And maybe also the death of others will actually help you, sadly, to become stronger. This is what happened to me by thinking, hey, there's this little thing that I always postponed. I would like it to happen before it's too late. So life is unfair. It's probably horrible to think to speak so lightly about death, but to be honest, it's a bit scary how sometimes the death of others gives meanings to other people's life, even though it's to be too late for that person. So now this talk was a bit too much. It was a very focused on generic stuff so far, but I just have this part about infosec. Because infosec is a problem that security doesn't have easy metrics. Defense is very political. Infosec people prevent projects to launch. Infosec prevents things to happen. We've seen the annoying people going in the wrong direction, you know. First, there is the problem of doing nothing. Then you brag about something you're good at, but you actually do nothing. You detect a problem, and rather than fixing the problem and fixing the whole class of problem, you measure the poundage, and then you brag and you insist on how fast you reacted and how much you saved, but you actually didn't fix the overall problem. And that's a problem with InfoSec. It's addictive because it's an easy way to show progress and results. And in the end, you were milking the same cow for forever, you know. So another thing is when you have access to some exclusive data, something is out, and you milk your data, you modify stuff until you have something impressive, you know? Then you bullshit your way into a conference. You brag about visibility and impact, and again, the actual impact is none. I see these tendencies in infosec way too much, and I would like them to change. It's just a personal wish, but um, infosec really lacks honesty. There's also the fake difference research, and again, uh, you just shake results until something can be concluded but not reproduced. You then bullshit your way into in a conference, and you publish the minimum results, but actually totally useless from actual security perspective. And then you conclude that your project is an international success. This is really recurrent behavior in infosec that is actually not making anyone more secure. So the academic research that is taking just hello world, doing something awesome with it, and is actually totally useless in practice. And you see those papers pretending they solve something, but actually the impact is null. Uh, I'm not there to change it, but if I could make one of you change, not do it, that could be an improvement. And again, the attacks, it's also work on the offense side of things. When you find a vulnerability that you don't necessarily understand, that is not necessarily new, and you get the whole logo website sticker, you apply at conference. I mean, I've seen some people pouring themselves champagne at Black Hat just over flipping a single bit of a documented file format. It's really, how do you say, face palming. And again, you're doing great conclusion. You bullshitted your way to Black Hat, and the impact is null. So I would really like that talks are more honest from the very beginning. Be honest with the results, the impact. Mention previous. I mean, academia does that correctly, but the talks, the infosec talks, are not necessarily. There's no need to do something new. Just mention if you didn't, if it was there's something in the past. Also, it's important to mention failure because if we don't do that, then it feels like infosec is full of winners who never fail, and then people have this imposter syndrome because they think they realize they failed while doing their research, and so they're just wondering what's wrong, you know. So this kind of social media oriented easy wins and fast conclusions is really not helping towards honesty and people outside of infosec understanding and accepting us. Of course, it's up to you. You can be a cheater and then pretend it's the hand of God or something. Don't act surprised when your credibility is gone. I wonder if eventually we'll have everyone stopping believing in infosec at all, exactly like happened in video games in the past when they thought, okay, too many crappy games, video games suck. Will at some point we lose credibility for infosec? I don't know. I hope not. And again, regarding gatekeeping, it's okay if you don't in infosec play CTF, do any research, give any presentation, do any hacking. Most hackers cannot code properly. So at Google, for example, we have some people who are in our teams who are just coders. They just know very well how to program things that is stable, that is robust, that is useful. They implement our ideas in a way that is solving a problem for everyone. And yet they are not. They are super useful and they don't play CTF, they don't do research. So see what I mean? You can be super helpful if you don't play CTF. I don't play CTF. You don't have to do new research. You can just apply some methods. I mean, all bakeries do, I don't know, bread. And there's not necessarily a new recipe, and that's good enough. You don't need to speak in conferences. if you don't want to. Some people just shouldn't because they are definitely not comfortable with that, and it's bad to force them to. So no gatekeeping. You can be useful in InfoSec. You can be super useful in InfoSec, even if you don't do any of these. And there are probably a lot of others, but yeah, I think it's important to be reminded. And yeah, among all this, you'll be in InfoSec, you'll have to find a job and everything. Yeah, this pandemic thing certainly didn't help. Now, at last, a conclusion. I'm sure it's a bit too much for you. Things I wish I knew. Stop focusing on the best. People are different. Everyone has skill. You're much more than your work or studies. Focus on yourself. Don't try to be someone else. And connecting outside your bubble helps a lot. It's hard, but it helps. There's really no shortcut. Don't be surprised that it takes time. You learn things on the way. It takes time, like everyone else. You're not worse or more an idiot than anyone else. Hopefully, you don't make the mistakes, but you make other ones. Maybe. And that's all I have for today. And now, if you have questions.